Hello and welcome back to the Tigers Now Roundtable. This is Manny Robinson, joined by Bart Wright and Scott Kiefer. I call it pretty music, but the old people call it blues. As Chad Morris asserted, there is no such thing as an ugly win, but Clemson's 38-17 victory over Virginia Tech on Saturday was just a bad haircut away from ugly. The Tigers posted their worst figures under Morris in yards per play and 3 and outs, but they still produced 31 points. The defense said, "Don't you worry about a thing," stuffing Virginia Tech on 2 fourth-down plays and grabbing 3 interceptions, one of which Jonathan Meeks returned for a touchdown. In the end, Clemson was overjoyed over another win over the Hokies. And as I hope you can tell, our artist of the week is Stevie Wonder.
Wow, that was right there. Stevie, the great Stevie. The defense found some higher ground last week, while the offense was saying, "Heaven help us all."
Yeah,
so it was a good week for the defense. Finally, we've been waiting on that, you know. And when you look at the initial numbers, you say they gave up 406 yards.
Right.
It's not so good, but compared to what they've done prior to that, that wasn't so bad. And they made big plays.
Right. 3
interceptions, 1 return for a touchdown, and thwarted them twice on 4th-down plays. I think the defense has to claim a victory there.
It was, though, the 4th game in a row they've given up at least 400 yards, right? With not really a good thing. But I thought the point on that was basically got 21 points out of turnovers, special teams, defensive stuff. There's 21 points that more went to the defense than the offense, and that was the first. If the season were a lifetime, you would say, for once in my life, I got some turnovers and made something happen on defense.
And 1 week after you won over Coach Sweeney, you and Chad Morris were right in accord.
It's just two minds on parallel tracks, headed down the railroad. I got a couple ornery emails, phone calls, because I wrote a column on Sunday out of the game. They win the game, and I had written something to the effect of, if you look at this game, it's nice to win, but if you look inside it, this is really how you lose games, if you play against somebody that's actually good. And some people saw that as, oh, you're knocking Clemson or something. But I think if you care, I think of it more as a family. We're a family. They're our family, or our larger family. If you cared about somebody, if it was your kids, you would say, you know, it's good that you did that. It's good that you got through. But you know, you really need to get better at that, because you care. You want them to get better. Right. You know, you want to point out the inefficiencies, so not to make them hang their heads, to make them go, oh yeah, okay, I get it now. So anyway, so that was a point on that. And then Chad came out, and he was much harder on him.
He was
much harder on him than I was.
No one critiques Clemson's offense any harsher than Chad.
Yeah.
Which I think is good.
Right. He says, I ain't going to stand for it.
I thought our performance was very lethargic, and I'm going to be just as nice and as G-rated version as I can be about this. Whether it was the open week that we had a lot of rust on us, our timing was off. I mean, that's excuse. That's just bullcorn in my opinion. I mean, we weren't on. You know, there's going to be days maybe the quarterback's not on, but for us not to play at the level that we're expected to play at and that we demand them to play at is not acceptable. There's no such thing as an ugly win. You may not play well, you may play ugly, but a win is great, and we're extremely excited about a win. And let's don't lose focus of that. But for us to achieve the goals that we've set for ourselves here, we've got to play better than that. I think some of our guys might have been walking around signing too many autographs and too excited about themselves, and so it's kind of refocused those guys, because we had to put the Sharpies up this week.
Talked to Mike Leach this week out at Washington State, and he said one of the things he likes most about Chad, because he remembers Chad from when Leach was at Texas Tech, and Chad was winning championships in 3 different schools during that time, high schools in Texas. But he said the best thing about him, he said he admires coaches like Chad the most because they're not interested about winning as much as they're interested in about playing, getting their teams, their units, their offensive line, their quarterbacks to play as well as they can play. That's got to be the measuring rod. And he said Leach said something to the effect of, he always appreciates when a coach comes out after a win and is really unhappy about it, and will tell you why. That shows that they're not just superficial. They're really thinking about the internal mechanisms that are going awry sometimes. And now, they were, I don't want to say they were lucky to win the game because they were playing against really a not very good team. But I guess they were lucky that they were playing who they were playing. Because things went bad for Virginia Tech.
Yeah.
I mean, when they weren't making turnovers, looked it up, that's 7 turnovers in 3 games, 3 straight losses for Virginia Tech against Clemson. Clemson has 2.
Wow.
So Clemson's +5 in these 3 games. And when you do that, when you kick it around like that, you just, greatly diminish your chance to win.
And I received some emails prior to the game, critical of things I had written in advance about Virginia Tech. But in talking to some Virginia Tech followers and people who cover them, there's no one more critical of them than their own fan base. Yeah. They really feel let down. Mm-hmm. They're used to winning and winning big, and this season has not been good at all. Yeah. No. The preseason pick to win the Coastal, and you're laying eggs every other week. You lose to Pitt by 2 touchdowns.
Right.
I mean, anyway, but Clemson is continuing this mastery over Virginia Tech. If they could play them, 12 times a year, it'd be great.
Yeah.
And Virginia Tech didn't get a lot of the bounces, and that brings up our greatest hit. Josh Watson grabs hold of Logan Thomas and just hangs on like he's water skiing. Although Thomas was still upright and able to throw a pass to a wide-open receiver, the play was blown dead, and Watson was credited for a sack. Maybe the first one when he was the only one on the ground. The officials ruled that Thompson's forward progress was stopped, leaving Thomas hotter than July.
He was. And I think he had an argument.